Hi everyone, this is Vipin here from vipinramdas.com. Welcome to my new blog series on learning from the experts, and to help me get this series kicked off, I've got a very wonderful, beautiful and special guest with me tonight, Danielle Serpico, all the way from Ireland. Danielle is a certified NLP master practitioner and trainer, mind coach, a self-defense expert, motivational speaker, writer and an artist. She has over 20 years of experience managing large teams, being self-employed, and starting up her own businesses. She's also the author of the newly acclaimed book, The Black Belt's Mastermind. Danielle has trained directly with the co-founder of NLP, Richard Bandler, and is a recognized neuro-linguistic master practitioner and trainer with the Society of NLP. Isn't that wonderful? Danielle, welcome.
Hi, Vipin. It's wonderful as always to be talking to you.
Let's get started. Can you start off by telling us a little bit about yourself and how you got started with NLP?
It all started when I went through a big life change, approximately about 5-6 years ago, and my life turned upside down. Everything that I had known before changed, and I lost my identity. I had been previously self-employed all my life in the restaurant trade, and I ended up, due to a lot of reasons and the economy, I ended up closing down. So basically, as I'm sure you're probably you can relate to a little bit with the situation over in Cyprus. So basically, I had to reevaluate my whole life, and at this stage, I picked up a book on a shelf that used to belong to my mother. And I read it, but this time I really started to read it, and I started to listen to the messages within the books. So I felt very, very down. I didn't know who I was, and I suddenly realized that I had, to a certain degree, been wearing a mask all along. While I was outwardly confident, I had no self-esteem and no self-belief. And it took my businesses collapsing for me to really realize that. I felt very lost. I was humiliated, I was afraid, and I didn't know where to go. So these books started to help a little bit. And I read a book on NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, and it helped. So I read another one, and it helped a little bit more. I bought a CD, and it helped a little bit more. And I got so interested in it that eventually I decided to go and do a course on it. And I spent 9 days on this course, very intensive, from 9 in the morning till 9 o'clock at night. And basically we spent a lot of time visualizing and imagining our dream goals and doing a lot of different NLP techniques, which I'll probably tell you a little bit more about. But and on this is when, at the end of this course, that I really started to discover the true me and my own purpose and my own self-belief.
Wonderful, Danielle. Thanks a lot for that. You know what? I've heard about NLP, and I'm sure a lot of other people have heard about NLP, and there's all kinds of different understandings about it. Can you help us understand what NLP truly is?
You see, we're all suggestible. If we weren't suggestible, we'd be dead. So if you're suggestible, basically you can have NLP done on you, and you're also doing NLP every day, whether you realize it or not, on others. So every time that you do something instinctively, or something that you've been taught by your culture or traditions or whatever, to interact and build rapport with somebody else, you're using NLP. So you're looking at me now and you're using eye contact, because we know in this society that using eye contact is good manners. We know that smiling builds rapport. We know that a handshake is polite. So we do these things instinctively and from our cultural backgrounds. So this is all NLP, because all it is really influencing, ways of influencing that can be very, very beneficial for each other. The other description I would use for NLP is that basically it is the study of successful people. What Richard Bandler, the gentleman that I trained with, and John Grinder did, the two co-founders of NLP, was that they studied successful people in their field, in the field of psychology, in the field of counselling, and they literally noted and took down notes on everything that they did that was similar and everything that they did that was successful. They looked at the most successful people in their field, people like Virginia Satir and Milton Erickson. Well, everyone knows him as the most famous hypnotist. And basically they monitored and recorded what they did that got results. And they formed this pretty much into a system. So it wasn't that it wasn't there before, but they coined the term NLP so that they could create a system so that we could follow it and learn what works. So NLP is not about why, the reasons why we are the way we are, but it is about how we can change it and what we can do about it. So in my book, The Black Belt Mastermind, I talk about a gentleman called Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. He explains this in a lot more emotional terms, and it's a great book to read. But he explains that no matter what circumstances we have in our lives, whatever life throws at us, we can't control what's outside, but we can always control what's inside. And that's what NLP does. It teaches us how to control what goes on inside our brain. And for me, NLP is simply a way of life. It's something that you do and you practice every day, and you're basically aware of your thoughts and you're able to control your thoughts in a more useful and beneficial manner for you and for other people around you.
All right, Daniel. Obviously, NLP is a lot about changing and looking inside and trying to change yourself. What has been your own personal experience? If I had to ask you, what have been your 3 biggest changes that you've seen since you've started practicing NLP?
Okay, as I was saying, was that I went, and the first time I experienced NLP in real life was when I went and did my first course with Richard Bandler. And as I said, we spent 9 days very intensive visualizing, and we were visualizing all the time big, bright, bold, beautiful images and blowing them up in our heads and expanding them and making them as vibrant and as colourful as possible. Now, before I started my journey when I was 20 years of age, when I opened my first restaurant, I had gone to art college. And as a little girl, I always had this deep core urge or need or want or whatever you want to call it to reach out to people and somehow make them smile. That was something that I instinctively wanted to do for some reason. Okay, and I used to do it as a little girl by smiling, by entertaining people, by singing and dancing. I grew up in Rome, and I'd ride the tram with my granddad, my nonno, and he would play the mandolin and I would sing, and we just do this for fun, and we would do this everywhere we went. I'd literally just entertain people for fun, and I used to enjoy that, and I used to enjoy making people smile. And I would also write poems and write little stories and do little illustrations, and I love art, and I would see the results. So I grew up wanting to, as a little girl, one of my dreams was to be a children's book illustrator and write messages about the power of your mind and how you can overcome things, and put these messages into a beautiful storytelling book with beautiful images. And when I was in college, basically I used to paint really, really small, because that's what I was studying to do for book illustration. So anyway, going back to the present time, fast forward, another 20 years or not quite 20 years, I was in my course. I came back from the course, and after visualizing so brightly, I went the next day and bought in the art and hobby shop the biggest canvas that I could buy. I never painted on a canvas before, and I'd never painted with oils. I didn't have the patience to try and learn how to use oils because they take so long to dry, and I really had this urge to paint something that weekend. So I bought acrylics, which are the next best thing. So about 2 days later, I had done this massive painting, huge painting, and for me, that was probably the biggest turning point in my life, because I realized when I did that I had let go of my fears. I had let go of all my limiting beliefs and inhibitions. I knew from that moment that I no longer cared what anyone else thinks. Now, I think that painting is spectacular. and that is all that really matters, because art is subjective anyhow. It went on to a very good home, and I ended up eventually giving it to somebody who really needed to smile, and she looks at that on her wall and it helps her to smile, and that for me is the best result ever. But that was probably my biggest turning point. After that, what I learned from NLP was my biggest things would have been to manage my emotions better. Basically, I learned that we are all, as I was saying, in control of our own state, that we can change our emotions if we really, really want to, and that often if we really start to analyze it, we realize, though sometimes hard to admit, that there is a payoff in keeping ourselves in a particular state, whether that is feeling depressed. There's a payoff all the time. It took me a long time to recognize that and admit that, and I was very angry with anyone who would suggest otherwise. But feeling depressed and curling myself under the duvet on the bed did give me something. Listening to sad music on the radio as I drove home in my car did give me something. I write a lot about this in my book as well. But I realized that ultimately for me to progress and for me to change my life, I would have to let go of those crutches, let go of those emotions that were hindering me to move on. So I learned how to manage my emotions better and be much more conscious of what was going on within me. Thirdly, what I learned, I learned how to communicate better. I learned how to communicate better to myself, obviously. I recognized that internal voice inside my head. I heard that horrible, nasty voice that used to speak to me all the time. And, I realized how much of my day I spent criticizing myself. And if you actually add it up into time, and it was hours out of my day that I was brainwashing myself in a negative manner. So what I did was I learned through NLP techniques to switch off that voice and actually change it. Now you may think I'm a little bit crazy, which yes I am, but I changed it to the voice of my now dead dog. Okay, he was my baby, and I imagined him speaking in a funny way. So when I spoke to myself in that funny way, instead of saying something like, for example, Danielle, you're stupid, or Danielle, you're hopeless, or Danielle, you're useless, instead it would go, Danielle, you're hopeless, Danielle, you're useless, and you're. And it didn't have the same power because it would make me laugh. So I learned how to listen to my internal voice, turn off the tape of that critical thinking, realize that thinking positively and beneficially about yourself is not an egotistical thing, okay? In fact, it is all our rights. We have to love ourselves before we can love anybody else. Exactly the same way as if you go onto a plane and if there's, some kind of emergency, the air mask will fall down and you have to put it onto yourself before you can go and help anybody else. Once we realize that we love ourselves, then we can go and actually love somebody else. So I started to love myself.
It's obvious that, NLP has had quite a significant impact on your life. Apart from what you've actually gone through personally, could you also share with us some of the experiences that your clients have had in respect to the kind of changes to expect once we start practicing NLP?
Okay, if somebody's afraid to go into a room because there's a tiny little spider, that can control their lives. So I've seen something as simple as that, as helping somebody overcome their fear of spiders, change and transform their lives, because no longer do they have to have people coming into their house with them every night. No longer do they have to ask their mother or a friend to come in and check their bedroom for them. They're now able to carry on and be independent. So I've seen changes, such small little changes that may seem silly to us, but completely crucial and vital for somebody else, transform somebody's life to huge transformational changes where I've seen people who have been afraid to go outdoors, being able to step outside for the first time in 20 years. I've seen people who wanted to go for job interviews and, promotions and didn't have the courage to suddenly moving up the ranks and getting great jobs. I've seen, I had a client there recently who started off that she had no partner, a bad job, depressed, sitting at home all day, to ending up moving country, okay, making up with her sister who she'd been, not speaking to for 20 years, buying a house with her sister and a holiday home, getting a promotion and finding a lovely partner, okay, who she's very happy with. So the transformations can be Huge. It helps people ultimately, I would say, at the underlying cause of most root problems is again similar to the problem that I had myself, that we don't address and that we can go through whole of our lives without addressing, is our own self-belief. So I have seen people transform their lives once they realize that and really start analyzing their own confidence and their own self-belief in detail and starting to love themselves and look at the good points in themselves. So yeah.
Daniel, now that you've got people interested, obviously people want to understand how do they go about learning about NLP. Now, of course, that's besides reading a book, which is something which I'm doing. What are the other ways in which people should start to try and learn and, more importantly, understand and implement NLP in their lives?
Besides reading my book, of course, and coming to see me, no, I think reading about it is great, but more importantly, really taking in the information. I'm sure we've all experienced, having a conversation with somebody and you are really planning in your head to what you're going to say next and how you're going to answer them. It's the same thing, that we learn if you're interacting people. We learn how to listen for the sake of listening, not for the sake of interrupting. We really listen to the message. And I would say the same advice when you're reading anything about NLP or any important message is to really analyze the message, write down the key points, and then sit down with a piece of pen and paper and write down, how will this benefit my life? What does this actually mean? So in NLP terms, one of the biggest takeaways that we get in NLP messages is, we were talking about, I was saying NLP is a way of life for me. And that's how I would describe NLP. One of the biggest NLP messages is, the map is not the territory. So what that means is simply the map that we have before us is not necessarily the reality and the way things actually are. So that has so many different connotations if we really start analysing what that means. So we all know that what we see and what we experience is subjective. So it is down to our own environment, our own upbringing, our own emotions, our own viewpoint, everything that's tainted our lives up to that point, everything that's influenced our lives will give us a particular view and interpretation of any given circumstance at any moment. So we know that that particular moment, that territory, is not necessarily really the territory. It's just our interpretation of it. And we're looking at it by looking at our map, which is our life experiences, everything that's led us up to that point, to give us that interpretation. Once we know that this is not necessarily true, that the map is not the territory, we can start to write down all the different things, how this can affect our life and how this information can benefit us. That was hugely transformational for me, because it would change things as simple as my communication and how I would interact with people. I would now realize that to analyze and to not be so judgmental or to jump to conclusions, because I would remember in my head the map is not the territory. So if somebody didn't smile at me, I wouldn't immediately presume any longer that, oh, that person doesn't like me. I might think that person's having a bad day. I don't know the full facts here. If someone didn't have eye contact with me, for example, when they were listening to me, were constantly turned sideways, I now know that could mean that they are an auditory person. What I mean by that is, in NLP terms, we learn that we all have, we use our senses, our sight, our sound, our feelings to listen to somebody, to interact and communicate with somebody. But we generally have, one of them is our preferential kind of mode of communication. So for some people, it is through sounds. With some people, it's through vision. With some people, it's through emotion, through feeling. So if you have somebody who's an auditory, who's very much interested in sound, then they might turn their head to you all the time, every time they listen to you, because they're literally putting your ear forward. So these bits of information taught me that the map is not the territory, and to pay attention to not jump to conclusions and to actually think before I speak or follow through with an emotion. So your question was yes. So I would say really analyze the words that they're looking at, and most importantly, learn to become aware. Become aware of that internal voice, and simply the act of becoming aware how will detach you and disassociate you from that overwhelming emotion, and then you have a chance to change things. I would say in NLP terms, we always learn that, you know, we have control over our thoughts. Like I was saying, Viktor Frankl says in his book as well, it is the one thing that we always have control over. Between every thought and every action, we always have choice. No matter what, between every thought and every action, we always have choice. Okay, and accepting that and taking responsibility, our ability to respond, is transformational, because we now get back control of our lives rather than playing the victim or saying that, you know, we don't have control because, you know, outside sources are affecting our lives this way, but we always have control within our minds. So in NLP terms, I would say becoming aware that we have that choice, you know, and we have this thought process, that we can analyze it and we can actually change it. That this is our control panel. We are something else. We are something bigger than just our brain. Our brain works for us, not the other way around. We tend to forget that a lot, that we think that this is it, what's in here is all that we are, but we have a bigger soul. We are something much, much bigger than that. This is simply a control panel that works for us. So make sure that you don't let that control panel take over you.
Danielle, we're coming to the end of our session. Before we leave, I want us to do one more thing and give something to our viewers. Imagine if you are talking to one of your closest of friends, what would be, let's say, the top 3 or 5 tips that you would want to share on NLP?
Become aware in everything that you do. Become aware of that voice inside your head. The act of hearing it will take away the overwhelming emotion linked with it, because you have literally detached yourself, moved outside of your body to look down and hear that voice. So that will help you to detach and not feel as bad as you did previously. So I would become aware of it, become aware of your thought processes, become aware of how you strategize, because we all actually do. A lot of the time people say, oh no, I don't, or, you know, I don't have a thought process, I just did it automatically. That's taking away responsibility, and once we take away responsibility, we no longer have control. So realizing that we actually do have a thought pattern. So if, for example, there's something that you are unmotivated to do, then, like, say you want to go and do exercise and you don't feel motivated to do it, or say you want to eat healthily and you don't feel motivated to do it, whatever it is, we do that because we have a strategy. Our strategy is always based on pain or pleasure. We either move towards pain, move away from pain, or move towards pleasure. Discovering what is your trigger and what works for you, again, is hugely beneficial for you to understand how to improve your strategies in the future. So if you're somebody that, for example, lies in bed in the morning and doesn't want to get up out of bed, you find it difficult to motivate yourself to get up early, that is either because there's a stronger urge to stay in the comfort of your bed because it's so enjoyable, which means that you're moving towards pleasure, or you're staying in bed because the thought of what you're getting up to do doesn't excite you or isn't interesting to you or enjoyable, which means that you're moving towards pain. So basically analyzing that, learning your strategies is hugely beneficial for you. Once you know something that you do well, so say for example you're motivated to go for a jog and you enjoy the thought of that, because when you think about going for a jog you feel light and you feel exuberant and you feel fully energized, then that means that you're someone that moves towards pleasure. So if you think of something that you're not as excited to do, link pleasure with that act and it will be more motivating for you to do. So learning your strategies is, and analysing your own thought process is hugely powerful. I would say another, I'm trying to think, I would say listen to the messages. Listen to the messages in the books that you read. Listen to the messages that people that you trust and value are giving you, okay, and really analyze the messages I said earlier. Write down, how does this actually affect my life? Write it down in a blue pen, okay, because it has a better effect on your brain, especially if you're writing down your goals, especially if you want something to actually manifest and come true. I would say write it down in blue pen, because your brain doesn't process black. It's not a color. It doesn't process black the same way as it does color. So when it sees color, it sees it as more important. Okay, so it actually recognizes and registers it in your unconscious mind much deeper than if it was just written in black. So I would say to that, I said another thing about NLP, I would say understanding how our brain works is very important. So we all know that we have, most people have probably heard that we have an unconscious and a conscious mind. So our conscious mind is actually only about 7% of our mind, whereas 93% of it is our unconscious mind. Really listening to that and understanding what that means, again, listening to the message of that is very, very powerful. When you go to sleep at night, you dream. Yeah, we've all had a dream where we wake up feeling happy, wake up feeling afraid, wake up feeling sad because we felt emotion while we were dreaming. How did that happen if it was only a dream? Why did we feel emotion? We felt emotion because we actually thought it was true. Because when we were dreaming, our unconscious mind was active. Our conscious mind had switched off because it was sleeping. Okay, but we were still alive. So our unconscious mind was keeping us alive while our conscious mind had a rest. And our unconscious mind did not know that this was simply a dream, so it felt emotion. Basically, the key point here is that our unconscious mind does not know the difference between what is real or imagined. If we really analyze this really, really important point, then we can analyze how that's useful. Okay, if our unconscious mind does not know the difference between what is real or imagined, what does that mean for us? That means that if you can trick your mind into believing that you've done something, once you've done it once, it's much easier to do it again, right? So that is the principle which I'd say is the next most important NLP point, is visualizing. So a lot of people visualize, but they don't really understand it. A lot of people have heard of the secret of the law of attraction, but they don't really fully understand it. Okay, if we visualize and we simply say, oh, I want to be rich and I see myself counting money, there's no emotion really behind it. So our mind, our conscious mind, is still awake, which is another word for our conscious mind is our critical mind, okay, because it acts as a filter, okay, and analyzes everything that you're thinking. Okay, so your critical mind, your conscious mind, only takes in about 7 or 9 pieces of information, where your unconscious mind takes in billions. So if we visualize just simply and just say, oh, I'm counting money, there's no emotion, our unconscious mind knows then that this isn't true. I'm just visualizing. This hasn't happened. It hasn't really happened. If we visualize with intent and with emotion, and we actually get the feelings like when we're dreaming, we actually get that level of emotion. So say, for example, you want to be, in a year's time, you want to be self-employed, running your own business and living in a villa by the sea. Say that's your dream. Actually analyze what are the reasons for that. Really break it down to what really gets you goosebumps. So is it really just for that, or is it because you want to make the people around you happy? Is it because you want to see your family and your children happy? Is it because you want to make a difference in the world? Work it backwards so that you get emotion. Work it backwards so that you get the hair standing on the back of your neck and goose pimples on your skin. When you get the level of emotion, that is when you visualize. When you're visualizing like that, you've discovered your purpose in life, and 2, you've really kidded your brain now. Okay, because your brain actually thinks that it's happened because you've put the emotion with it. Once your brain thinks it's happened, then it's going to be a lot easier to do it again. The other reason why this works is because psychologically we all have this need, if we lose something, to get it back. So if I gave you 50, if you didn't have 50 euros in your front shirt pocket right now, you're probably not really bothered because you don't have 50 euros in your front right pocket there. But if I took 50 euros out of your pocket there, you would probably kind of go, hey, that was my 50 euros, I want it back. Okay, that's our natural instinct. That's our psychological instinct to get back what we've had before. So if your unconscious mind, which you now know is 93% of you, feels that it's lost something that it had and that it deserved and that made you so happy and that gave you that emotion, it's going to do everything in its power to get it back. A simple example to show the power of this and how our unconscious mind works constantly to get back information for you and to continues to work even though we are not consciously aware of it is, have you ever had the name of somebody on the tip of your tongue but you couldn't remember it and you said, oh, I don't know, I can't remember it, and then an hour later it popped into your head? Okay, what happened? Your conscious mind stopped searching, but your unconscious mind kept on searching because it works for you. That's what its job is, to work for you. So it kept on searching until it found that information for you. So exactly the same as if you kid your brain into, you visualize something with intent, with emotion, you imagine your dream goal really big and bright and beautiful, and you get that emotion, your unconscious mind thinks it's happened, and then will do everything in its power to get you there. So they would be my top tips for NLP.
Well, thank you very much for spending time with us. It was wonderful talking to you. If you are interested in buying Danielle's book, you can find it on Amazon. And if you live in Ireland, you can also buy it from www.eprints.ie. You can also have a look at all the wonderful work that Danielle is doing and her upcoming programs by visiting her website, theblackbeltmastermind.com. If you're looking to change the way you think, to get rid of your limiting beliefs and get motivated, I'll highly recommend that you subscribe to Danielle's blog. Danielle, thank you once again for the great talk. Have a wonderful evening and talk to you soon. Bye-bye.